meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, Mayor Kratzky, I am present. Moko,
Present.
Groko,
Present.
Kufal,
Present.
Eker,
Here.
Padilla. Sorry, I talked
Present.
to you, Tony.
You tricked me.
Sorry, did not go in order. Do we have any changes for the agenda tonight?
I don't have any changes, but I just wanted to mention, under the consent agenda, we have a license application for the sale of edible products infused with THC. And I've asked Mark just to kind of give us a quick summary. You'll recall last year we adopted an ordinance, but we also had a, what do you call it again?
Moratorium, yeah.
Moratorium. And so I just want to just go over that real quick. Just see, just
Do you want to
before-
do that now, or?
When you get to the consent agenda.
Okay, sounds good. Comments, updates, concerns? Do we have any citizens here who would like to speak tonight? It doesn't look like it. Council members, any updates? And city staff?
The swimming pool got a new roof on it. So
That's good.
we just had the pavilion left.
Okay. Thank you for the update. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do you want to have Mark's discussion first, or should we?
Sure, if that's okay.
We approved the regular agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we?
Did we?
Oh, no,
No,
we
we
didn't. We
didn't.
went on to comments, updates, concerns. We have to go back to number 4 and approve the agenda. Thanks, Jessica, for catching that.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Eager to approve the agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Groko. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we will move on to the consent agenda and have Mark give us a.
Sure. So right now, Minnesota's in kind of an odd spot of having 2 cannabis ordinances that regulate essentially what can be purchased on a retail level in terms of cannabis products. So what was first legalized several years ago now was the low dosage hemp Delta 9 THT. So these are cannabis edible products that are typically either gummies or drinks that are produced from certain type of cannabis. It's hemp is what they call it. And that was made legal. You see that these products all across tobacco stores, liquor stores, all across the state. The other subset of cannabis products are all the other marijuana products. And that was legalized about a year ago, and that hasn't gone into effect yet. So from the city's perspective, we have an ordinance that applies to the hemp products that was legalized a few years ago, and an ordinance that applies to all the other retail operations that would either cultivate or sell recreational cannabis products. So we have a moratorium that prevents any of those applications. Those aren't even legal anyways until after the first of the year. What this is a license for is for the low dosage hemp-derived cannabis products, which were made legal years ago. And our moratorium doesn't affect the hemp licenses, so that was carved out because that was already legal. So this is a proper permit application for a low dosage hemp license. Everything else is not allowed in the city until after the first of the year. We have a moratorium preventing that, whether that's a retail dispensary, industrial operation to grow cannabis. Everything else that is not attached to low dosage hemp is illegal until after the first of the year.
What timeline is on that moratorium? How long can we ride on that?
So the first of the year is when it would expire, and that's as long as we could go. I believe it's been in place for a year. The statute otherwise requires us to at least allow for the licensing of 1 retail dispensary. We can prevent any of the other cannabis businesses from coming in, but in terms of a retail outlet where you can buy recreational cannabis, we can only limit that to 1 per city. So this is unfortunately coming to Gaylord. I guess I shouldn't say that. We don't know for sure if a dispensary would open up here, but in terms of us opening it up for at least one applicant, we don't have any way of preventing that. So,
You can put restrictions on where it can go, though.
correct.
right? So,
And they're tied, it's mostly tied to distances from schools and parks and daycares. So that's
S-
certainly
Similar to what we do, the city does with the off-sale.
correct.
I would look to do something like that.
so the CBD, isn't that commonly referred to as the hemp?
So CBD is, my understanding is that it's typically used to describe cannabis products that don't have intoxicating THC in them. So there's all different types of these deltas, I guess. There's Delta 9, Delta 8, Delta 10. Not all of them will intoxicate you, but apparently have other health benefits that we're still figuring out. So when we talk about CBD, usually that's for, I guess, non-intoxicating THC products, or not even THC, non-intoxicating cannabis products.
Yeah, because I thought that our last, not pulling it up here, but I thought that our last ordinance specifically mentioned the CBD and when these guys were applying for their licenses.
So you're saying, I don't believe that the moratorium,
Not the moratorium talked about THC specifically, but I thought that there was a difference between the CBD and THC. So the CBD was approved, and that's why these guys that were in the different stores, they were selling CBD products, and now we're looking at the marijuana or THC infused specifically. I guess I'm just asking if there's a difference between the CBD product that, like, you know, you can give to your dog, or you can take because you know, you have a knee pain, or maybe it's in some lotion or whatever that you buy, versus the THC infused gummy bear that people are buying. I guess I'm asking, is that the same?
yeah, so my understanding is that that was kind of a principal reason why they passed this low dosage hemp
Okay.
law legalizing it, was that there were all these other types of CBD cannabis products out there that they were having trouble regulating. And so the upside was that they were gonna legalize a certain low dosage of this hemp THC.
Okay.
And all other intoxicating cannabis, whether it's Delta 8, Delta 10, I don't even know all the different characterizations, then immediately that became illegal.
Okay.
And so down the road, we passed another cannabis law which made the retail distribution, cultivation of Delta 9 marijuana that we've always characterized it as being legal. But everything else, Delta 8, all those other Delta forms, I guess, are still illegal.
Okay.
And if it's non-intoxicating, so it doesn't make you high, but there's other health benefits, that is not included in either of these laws, and it's regulated in separate part of the state government.
So the council, would you have to have consensus then? I mean, to start working on an ordinance to limit it to the one for the.
So
the
I've
highway?
already been working on an
Okay.
ordinance.
Okay.
Last step is I just need to reach out to the county and figure out exactly how they plan to approach this, because one decision the council can make is whether they want to delegate the licensing and the certain amount of oversight to the county to do it on our behalf. If, obviously, we don't want to take that on. So that's one thing that we can consider. If we don't necessarily want to go through all the steps of, being part of the licensing, doing background checks, kind of the role we play with alcohol licenses, although a little different, then we do have the ability to delegate certain obligations to the county to do that. So that'll be something that I need to get some input on, and hopefully the next meeting I'll have a little more insight. And from there, you can decide, do you want to pass the cannabis ordinance that, where the city is the tip of the spear, so to speak, on licensing cannabis in the city, or we'd pass a separate ordinance that delegates all of that to the county. And, but again, haven't had discussions with the county about that, so it's pretty preliminary.
Would we still be able to pass an ordinance on where the potential place could be? If the county was to license, we could still have an ordinance and what would be an acceptable?
Yes,
location?
absolutely.
Okay.
So tonight on this, I don't see a reason to object to this license application. It seems to be legal and proper. But the other stuff, the ordinance, that stuff, we gotta sort out a little bit down the line.
Is there a limit to how many of these we can allow? Can we limit
I think we have
We
4 in the
estab- It was
ordinance.
established, you guys established it at 4.
at 4?
Anything else on that? Then I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
A motion from Kufal, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Groko. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public hearings, we don't have anything tonight. Communication requests and petitions, there's some information in the packet about tire appliance and electronics collection and an upcoming permit to carry class. Moving on to department and committee reports and action items. The first one on our agenda is Public Works, to continue our conversation about inflow and infiltration discussion.
Good evening, everybody. I have written down here just to continue the I&I discussion. I broke down kind of our sewer budget for 2025 for repairs and maintenance. For 2025 so far, right now is, we have $30,000 budgeted. And I broke down how many blocks we could do within that budget, if that's the way we want to go. 8 linear blocks would be 22,400. 9 blocks, 25,200, and 10 linear blocks would be 28,000. Like I said before, we always want to recommend when we do this, if we have downspouts on homes that go underground, we want to make sure we trace those and know where they're going, because I know that some of them probably go to the sanitary sewer, some of the older places, so. Yeah, a lot of it is where do we want to pull that money from to finance this? Is gonna be a lot of the discussion, and, like I said, what kind of, teeth are we gonna have in an ordinance to enforce it? Cause, you know, it's not gonna be worth spending all this money if we're not gonna enforce anything and make changes, you know, so. Yeah, so that's all I kinda got to start out. Does anybody have any ideas for the financing side?
When you're talking about the gutters and the downspouts,
Yes.
if you're doing 8, 9, or 10 blocks, what are you thinking for an estimate for those gutters and downspouts?
Doesn't cost anything to
They
do
don't
that.
cost anything?
No, that's just throwing some, if they do go into the ground, what we do is throw some water in there, some tracing dye, and we find out if it goes into the storm sewer or the sanitary, is what we do. We've done that before a couple places, so, yeah. So that's something we would do, while the other company is actually televising the lines, so, yeah.
Well, the funding, I mean, are we thinking we should take this out of the sanitary sewer fund? I mean, is that what?
I mean, we definitely can. Steve, do you know how much?
I would recommend that too. Of our enterprise funds, that one is doing the best right now from a budget standpoint. Our storm sewer, we put a lot of pressure on that fund because of that project that we did earlier this year, so the water fund, it's a strong fund too, but I think it's got some debt obligations associated with that fund a little bit more. So right now, our sanitary sewer fund is probably the healthiest of them, from a budget standpoint. Right now, the others are either budgeting to lose money next year or break even, whereas the sanitary is, we're gonna make money, so we could absorb the 30,000.
Well, only other issue I see is thought we talked that there's roughly about 100 blocks to do, correct? In that ballpark, you know, and I just think 5 years is kind of the maximum we wanna drag this thing out. I mean, to get to the bottom of this, and this will be a 10-year plan approximately if we, you know, instead of the 28,000, I mean, we should double that if we wanna try to have an end game here in 5 years.
Like 20 blocks a year for 5
I
years.
mean, I don't wanna spend more money like anybody else, but it's one of the bigger issues facing the city when we have heavy rains, so.
Right.
One of the other things, just to add to Ty, what he's sharing here, okay, let's say we are gonna find some out there, we're gonna find some foundation drains that are gonna be in the sanitary, then what? Are we just simply gonna tell the homeowner, you need to fix this, you need to correct it? Or is there gonna be some incentive package that the city's going to be offering to try to get them to do it? One city I did reach out to is the city of Waconia, and they've been doing an I&I program since 2010. And they provide, this is just one city example, I'm not suggesting that we would do this, but they provide $7,000. And generally, they stated that $7,000 covers most projects. So that's what they do. So I guess for your consideration, you know, do we want to do something like that? I mean, I guess I put myself in the homeowner's position. We're going to come in and say, well, you've got this problem, or we see it as a problem, you need to fix it. And the homeowner is going to be, well, it's going to cost me X dollars, my lawn's going to be tore up, and what benefit am I going to get out of this? Right now, everything is fine for me. I have no issues.
But it's illegal, it's an illegal connection.
Right, that's part of our leverage, right? But at the same time, in their mind,
And a lot
nothing's
of
wrong.
these homeowners bought their houses not knowing this was done.
Right.
That things were done this way and connected this way. So I mean, I think we should offer some assistance to help them because they're gonna be just as shocked as, you know, anyone, like they didn't know.
When you're
But
talking
it's their
assistance, are you talking loan, low interest loan, or what? I mean,
That could be an option, yeah. Depending on the cost of it, maybe they're not in a position to be able to come up with the money to do it.
What does Waconia do? Do you know, is there's a loan, or do they just offer the money?
I didn't ask that specific question, and he didn't offer it either. I mean, the 7,000, he said, you know, if they're offering 7,000, and he's saying that's basically covering most projects, that's quite already a big participation from a city level.
I think they added, I just read those notes too earlier, and their finance, that pays for like new sump pumps to put into place to rehook all the old stuff back up. So that's everything. That's not just going down and cutting those off and putting a new cap on. It's them financing for a new sump pump, either outside or inside. That's everything. So
I like Scott's idea of something like a low interest loan. I mean, that's taking the easy route. Obviously, that's the trick that's an easy trick to play. When you basically pay for the whole thing, you don't get any resistance back, but the fact is you end up raising taxes or fees to pay for it. So
Right. You know, and I get what you're saying, but at the same time, as a homeowner, unfortunately, you get unexpected expenses. I mean, whether a water line goes or your sewer line gets plugged or whatever, you're gonna have those unexpected expenses that you have to take care of that, yeah, really don't have a benefit to you. Like, yeah, you don't see the work, but like Chad said, you know, just to do the inspections of all the cost on that, and then we start giving money away to fix them, that's gonna be an expensive, very expensive project.
I'd aim for I like the idea of doing the low interest
Loan.
loans, something like that perhaps, and then work. start-
possibly assess it to their,
That's what it would be. It would be an assessment under their taxes. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, and that's what we talked about on the front end too. I'm fine with that. I mean, we can go that route.
Still do low interest.
But we gotta work on the ordinance too, right? I mean, this is
Right.
the first step, get this ball rolling, but
so you're thinking about 20 blocks a year for 5 years, that would cover.
I don't think we should drag this out. I mean, it's a serious, pray for no 3 to 5 inch rains for the next 10 years. I don't think a lot of residents are gonna go for that.
And after the crazy summer we had with rain, we have another summer like that, it's
We-
unfortunate.
I don't know that we're really dragging it out 5 years. Ty, don't you have a good idea of where our problems are in our cities? Is it gonna take
I would
5
guess the
years?
older part of towns, the towns where a lot of those the houses were built in the fifties and sixties, the west side of town especially. Yeah, there's places we can pick first to kind of really, I think, grab a lot of them if they are there.
So if you could identify certain areas that we can target that we know we're having problems in and do it at a
Yes.
slower rate, so we don't have to spend all that money, and we could do 10 blocks a year.
Right.
But it's hard to know that, Tony, because where the floodings happen, the contributors are gonna be way down here.
Yeah.
That's the trouble.
Well, I think, just going back to Waconia's notes, it sounds like they put, and Justin and I have talked about this before, what they do is they put flow sensors in the manholes themselves. And then when it does rain, it'll tell you exactly what flow is coming through what manhole. So if you have a block that has, say, older homes or a couple blocks, and all of a sudden you're getting more flow than all these other manholes, you can kind of target it that way.
But that's gonna be another step, more cost.
Right. Or we're gonna do them all anyway, just start in a spot and just start doing them.
So it's just how long do you guys wanna drag this out?
I get it, but I mean, I'm just looking at some kind of a cost savings versus
Right.
getting it all done in an astronomical cost to keep raising taxes versus can we target it in 5 years and get the majority of the issue resolved? 'Cause I
Right.
think there's some areas of town where there's not flooding because of the.
Yeah, it just, because I know the west side of town, particularly where I live, I mean, that video we showed you earlier this year of the manhole that was flowing from 11 houses compared to 40, it was flowing the same, so we know we got issues in that area.
I know there's at least 1 or 2 houses out at Lakeside Acres too. I mean,
Oh, yeah, it just,
I just don't know how you go about.
yeah, it's just, we'll just have to start picking and do a big block of them at once and eliminate those and go from there, and just try to target the most likely areas, I should say.
Does every single house have to be televised, or can you tell some of them by looking around whether anything's connected, or, I mean, if they have sump line running out in the yard and
Right.
none of the downspouts are running in the ground?
Yeah, so, I don't know when the city really started enforcing hard that, not when the new house was built, that you absolutely could not hook it up, because, I mean, it happened through the 60s and 70s. I would say the new houses, that's an absolute no-no, that's something they really target now. But, as far as outside, the only thing you're gonna be able to tell outside is downspouts, obviously, if they go into the ground. Drain tile, you won't be able to tell, because it's all hooked up underground. So,
So, I'm just, if you did 10 blocks in 1 year in a known area that we know is flooding all the time,
right.
isn't that gonna have a major impact on that flooding, or it's not gonna?
It should have some impact on it. It depends if we target the right 10 blocks, That's the hard part.
And, I mean, it's possible we could do 20 blocks this year just to get it going, and based on the information we get from that, we
Yeah.
could decide to keep doing 20 blocks, or if we want to drop it down to 10 blocks.
Yeah. You could do
In
more or
future
less
years.
every year, depending on what our financing looks like.
Or does it make sense to just finance the whole project up front, just do it all? I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not bonding for anything next year? We don't plan to bond for anything next year, right?
Right.
Do you know how much we have in our sewer funds, do you? For monies?
I think,
Okay.
that's a good point, Tony. I think the people that are affected by this, I think they would like your idea that you just brought up, quite frankly. This ain't something that I think the council should drag on for 5, 10 years.
It has been happening for a while. So if we can't fix it with the first big go-around, then just stop messing around with it.
Right now, we're budgeting for, in the sewer, it'd be 34,000 approximately, revenues above expenses for next year.
We're looking at roughly $250,000 needed to pay for the televising work to get done, just roughly.
Probably, yeah, that's a pretty rough estimate, yeah.
We borrowed $200,000 for LED lights, you know, over 10 years. I don't see how we don't do this, is my point. If that's what you were getting at, Tony.
And then you got everything's done, and then, I don't know. And the ordinance is there, then you have a timeline, then
Right. Yeah, then it's up, then you know what you got and who's need to repair what, you know. That's the point, you know, so.
Some respects, when you start cammering, you're gonna learn a lot. It's probably one of these things you might wanna reevaluate each year and see where you're going. We know we have an issue. So, at the end of last year, we had about $500,000 in the sewer fund. That was our fund balance. So that's where we're sitting.
How much do we need in there?
Enough to cover 1/2 of our annual expenses, which is about 175,000, plus our debt service obligation, so that's including, so that's what we need in there, is about 175, 200. So we're okay.
We could take 300,000 out.
Don't quote me exactly on that. I mean, I'm really going off of memory here, but, yeah. I'd say about half of that, 2 to 250.
And if you wanted to, you could almost do it half one year and half next year, just to speed it up some, that way you could get a little time to recover into that fund too, that way you're not draining it all out at once.
That's the other part of this. We know we're gonna have water and sewer projects in the future, and so that part of the bonds that were associated with those improvements come out of that fund then. So we have to, basically every year, when you do, say you have a project that had water and sewer in it, generally you're gonna wanna make sure you can cover those expenses within your budget. So you're looking at a rate increase generally with those kind of things to try to cover that expense. Otherwise, each year, if you're not making money, well, your fund is gonna continue to go down, and it can get to a critical point, which is where you don't wanna be, obviously. You know, we're talking about multi-million-dollar facilities here, and things cost a lot of money, these types of facilities do. So you just wanna make sure that you have the reserves to be able to cover those.
How much income goes in there?
Well, it's kind of like a business. Each year, it depends on how you perform, you know, how your expenses, if your revenues outweigh your expenses, then it builds your fund up each year.
On average, how much money goes in there though, per year?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Really?
Sorry.
I thought you had those numbers up there.
I can get these things for you. I can tell you what it increased from year to year, yeah, I can tell you that.
So are you recommending do it over 2 years then?
This project?
Yeah.
No, I guess I like the 5-year plan personally. I'd rather extend it out a little bit. I'm a little concerned personally about, okay, we're gonna start cammering all these, and I'd like to learn, what we're gonna find out from that cammering, and that'll help us as far as future years then go too. I'd like to analyze that a little bit. I don't wanna just jump in and commit to X dollars for 5 years, just like that. I don't see any issues with, doing 20 blocks in a given year, the first year, because that'll be that's where we're gonna learn a lot. But after that, reevaluate it then.
Yeah, so do 20 blocks this year, or in 2025, and then maybe next year if we're finding all these, step it up, or, try to finish it off.
Fine with that.
I like that
Yeah.
idea, kind of get a baseline this
I
year,
do
doing
too,
20
and
blocks,
see
and then
what we-
decide where to
Know
go
where
from
we're at.
there.
See how extensive the problem really is, and
Yep, what we find.
Can we do any, sorry,
No, I said, I agree.
can we do any this year yet? Since we
I
do
don't
have
see-
funds available.
I don't
and-
see why not, yeah. I can give him a call tomorrow and see what his schedule looks like.
Do we need to have an ordinance in place before we start?
That's the action
That's
piece though,
that's the
right?
enforcement part,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just
I
start
mean, we do,
this.
our ordinance currently says it's an illegal connection, but there's no,
But we can do this work before that.
So you can actually tell somebody you're gonna do this to their house.
No, we're not doing nothing to their house right now.
just
the
finding,
camera
needs-
just
Data
finding
collection.
out if they do have
Okay.
it.
The camera read is done from the street, so. Okay,
I think the idea of maybe doing like the flow meter or sensor, I think I like that idea. I mean, it might help us as far as kind of what you're alluding to, is every area necessary to go through and camera it? We can start putting some of that in a couple places or in manholes and seeing. Granted, those are only gonna really read during the heavy rain periods of the year.
so maybe something in spring when you get the snow melt and the spring rains, that might be a good time to do that.
Right.
What about Jessica's thought? What do you wanna do what do we wanna do now? This is talking what we wanna do for next year, right?
Yeah, like the main, where there's been a lot of damage, like on the blocks up from there, obviously was all down there.
Right,
But, so this spring, hopefully we can avoid some of that. If we
Right.
kind of look at some of those lines now.
right.
Start on like 10th Street, where
If we've,
Well, on the west, kind of west of Sixth Street, pretty much.
But all starting there.
You wanna do more than the 20 blocks, Jessica, or what? What are you saying? Or just as part of the 20 blocks?
I don't know,
if we've got the money, I mean, I have no problem starting now, rather than waiting until next
Right.
year, and then we can always decide in spring, can we afford to do some more?
Would
Beyond
you-
the 20?
Steve, would you be comfortable doing like 100,000 this year out of that fund?
This year,
Yeah.
just. Yeah, I mean, you have the cash, the fund, you have the cash in the fund. The trick is, the challenge is usually just trying to plan for the future. We're not bringing in a ton of money each year. Right now, we're budgeting $35,000 to bring in more next year above expenses. It's not an extraordinary lot of money when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar facility. So when you start drawing down your reserves, I'm just pointing out that it takes time to build those up. And also that, there's gonna come a time, maybe you wanna use those for a project too. Well, this is an important project, don't get me wrong. It's just, you have to decide where you wanna use those dollars towards, I guess. But I just wanna point out, it does take time to build them up.
But there was a lot of people that had a lot of damage this,
But we
Past
could go
couple
forward
years.
with the 20 blocks right now to start.
that's
I
kind of what I'm
agree.
thinking, the 20 block, and that's gonna get a
The
fifth of it.
televising, that's gonna
town
take a
and
couple
give
months
us-
to get all that done.
Right.
And we're gonna have so much better information after we do those 20 blocks, and then
Right.
we can make a decision
Somewhere to start, get
next,
going.
as soon as that study's done, then we can make a decision, do we need to do more now, or can we wait a year to do more? So I think we should just start with the 20 blocks and get as much information as we can, and then make informed decisions.
Agreed.
do you
Consensus
think
to get a
that's gonna
quote?
solve the problem, or do you think we should maybe do like 30 blocks instead of the 20?
I think 20 blocks, if we can target at one area and just see if we think that area is bad and see how many are actually in that 20 blocks, and then we can kind of go from there. I mean, the problem is, the west side of town, probably 2/3 of the west side of town goes to the west lift station. And we know you have problems there, but we also have, I mean, when it comes in on the main lift station, it's coming, so that's the rest of the town. So that's a little bit harder area to target than it would be just the west lift station kind of concentrating on that area. So
How many blocks flow to that west lift station?
basically everything from 6th to 10th north of Lincoln, and probably everything from 6th to 10th from Court to Lincoln, at least that. So that's almost the whole west side of town, west of the highway. I'm sure there's a little more. I think you go closer to the nursing home, and that flows that way also. But I think anything south of the nursing home all goes to the main lift station. So it's kind of cordoned off that way.
All right, we got consensus then, or what? Can we move forward?
20
Did you
blocks.
just get one quote then, or have you gotten a quote, or is this just an estimate?
This is, I called Empire Pipe, who we have do all of our televising. That's what the number he gave me. He says they do that stuff all the time, so he popped that estimate right up, so. He knew exactly what we were talking about, because they apparently do it for other towns too, so.
Mark, as far as the bidding laws, it's being, we're looking at $56,000 for 20 blocks, you got 28 for 10, so
Right.
$6,000. We should probably be going, try to solicit another quote.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to get at least another quote, just to, So we
There's
can go
another
with the low
company
one.
I can call.
you don't have to put it out there publicly or anything, but
Right.
it's good practice.
Could we come back then with the quotes for the next meeting,
Can't we just
2 weeks from now?
approve it?
Improve at the low.
October
The
8th?
lowest.
Second.
bid.
So our next meeting's the second.
Well, there's no hurry, I guess, either.
Well, if you're looking at
There's
doing it this
urgency with
year.
the whole thing, but I mean, to wait to get the quotes and approve them and.
Maybe
Yeah, I'll
check
get
on
one
their
from
schedules.
I'll get one from both two companies,
Okay.
so. Okay,
Thank you, Ty.
yep. Does anybody got anything else? All right, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is 9D. One, the draft ordinance for Chapter 72, Recreation and Other Vehicles, and we have Chief Eichten here tonight to talk with us.
Evening, everyone. Last council meeting, we met to talk about golf carts, ATVs being operated after sunset. I believe it was the council's consensus that we should allow that. Problem is, our current city ordinance doesn't allow for that. I was tasked with coming up with a draft ordinance to change the language to allow for ATVs, golf carts to be operated after sunset. Really didn't have to do too much to the ordinance. Just changed it from, I think the sections are highlighted in yellow there, changed it from 1 year to a 3-year permit, and then just added in the language about, down under G, letter G, unless it is also equipped with working headlights, taillights, and turn signals. Other than that, I just pretty much left everything alone. I think that would pretty much cover what we talked about.
I just got a quick question on that letter G there, after what you have highlighted there, then it says they shall not be operated in inclement weather or when visibility is impaired by weather, smoke, fog. A lot of people probably use them with plows on, like in snowstorms or plowing and stuff, so is that saying like if there's a snowstorm that they can't be running around clearing driveways or using them?
I guess the way I kind of look at it is, that's how it's always been written. I was figuring that, well, I guess now that I'm thinking that out loud, that doesn't really make sense, but I would think if you use it on your own private property to plow your driveway, I don't think that would pertain to it. I think this is, cruising around town in the middle of a
That's what I'm
blizzard.
saying, if they do other people's, driveways,
Sure.
that's what they use. And plus in a snowstorm, that might be a good mode of transportation if there's a lot of snow, in and around in a side-by-side, all-wheel drive.
Sure.
Mark, you want to chime in on
Yeah,
that?
so, this is the city regulating the types of vehicles that are within the right-of-way. So Chief Eichton's right that if you want to plow your own personal driveway with an ATV, that's not problematic. It's on your own property. But as it's written now, yeah, I mean, the plain language of the ordinance wouldn't allow you to operate in snowstorm to plow, essentially.
That's the way I read it too, that's why I was asking, because I don't know if we want that limitation in there or not.
I would want to look at that because, I mean, a lot of people pay someone to plow them out and that person needs to get there to do that work.
Yeah, get it right on paper, but at the same time, I know there's a lot of weird equipment out there, whether it's a Kubotas with headlights and blinky lights, but they don't have turn signals, and every snowstorm
And I
Charlie
get-
hasn't pulled those guys over yet.
Right, and I guess when you have a snowstorm like that, you're not too worried about it, because you know what they're doing, trying to
Right.
get things cleared out, but.
But you're right, we should clean the language up, so.
Unless you just want to strike off that last sentence altogether. Right after, and turn signals, just strike out that last lengthy sentence.
I mean, if they have working headlights and taillights, how is that different
Different
from
from
a car?
Yeah, I mean, so long as they have the taillights, signals, I mean, they are analogous to a car, so you could consider just creating the carve-out for essentially that, as long as it's equipped with working headlights, taillights, and turn signals, and then the inclement weather, I guess, is an exception in and of itself. So if you do have turn signals, headlights, you're roadworthy, then you can operate in inclement weather. If you don't, whether it's day or night, you can't.
Right, so we could almost take that last sentence out of there.
Well, unless you still want to restrict people's ability to operate these things in bad weather, notwithstanding the snowstorm question. So if we still don't feel comfortable with these things being out there in bad fog or in torrential downpours or whatever they may be, without turn signals, without lights, then you should probably keep that portion in there. But if we feel comfortable with these vehicles being out there during weather events, then you could take that out, I suppose.
But we're saying they need to have all that, lights, headlights, taillights, so even in inclement weather, they should have that on there.
Yeah, well, to clarify, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say if you want to operate in inclement weather, if you want to plow during a snowstorm, you have to have turn signals and lights.
Right,
And so if we want to create the opportunity for people to use these vehicles without those, I guess, factory add-ons, then you'd want to keep the language in there, allowing you to operate on streets without lights, turn signals, whatever, so long as it isn't inclement weather.
or do you change it to have it in there that to operate in inclement weather, you have to have all the equipment?
So just take that second highlighted section that starts with unless, leave it there, and then throw it again at the very end of that G as well. After 500 feet, throw it in there again.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah, that.
Okay, any other changes or suggestions? Then we need a motion to schedule a public hearing for 7 PM on October 16th for the purpose of considering an amendment to the times of operation for motorized golf carts and ATVs.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Padilla, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Kufal, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Moving on, next is Gaylord Library. We have a library assistant resignation in our packet. And I'll turn that over to Steve.
So Ruth Walter, she's resigning her position. You'll recall, she had given us notice before we hired the new library assistant at our last meeting. And so proposes to accept her resignation.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion from Eker, seconded by Groko. Any discussion? I'll just add, we want to thank Ruth for her years of service. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, 9H is city engineer, and we have Justin to talk with us about the street and utility project, application for payment number 4.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I jump into the application for payment, just an update on project status. The project is complete, but there are a few punch list items remaining. The contractor did tell us that they'll be on site tomorrow to finish the concrete punch list items. And that'll take a day, so they'll have all of the concrete punch list work done tomorrow. There are a few minor grading and some erosion control items on Railroad Avenue, and the schedule that the contractor gave us is for that work to be completed next week. So that will wrap things up for the project. Ty and I did do a walkthrough with the contractor a couple of weeks ago and took a look at everything. So overall, the project looks great. The application for payment in front of us tonight is a progress payment, so it's not a final payment. We're still holding retainage. So we expect to come back at probably your second meeting in October with the final payment once we get all the closeout documents from the contractor. So this is just a progress payment. As far as the budget for the overall project, the construction budget is coming in under, so we're under budget on construction, and I can see that the engineering will also come in under budget. So overall project is coming in under budget. When the contractor was in Gaylord doing the paving, or just prior to that, Ty had him look at the patching areas that he typically does every year, and they gave him some pricing that was competitive with what he's seen in the past. So Nielsen did the typical city patching on some various streets in town, and they also paved the access to the water tower out on Tower Street. So those things were done. And because the project is coming in quite a bit under budget, we were actually able to include them in this application for payment. And we're still under budget even with those added items. So it was about $10,000 worth of patching and work that would have been otherwise under another line item for the city, and we're able to include them in the project and standard budget. So that was some good news.
What kind of contingency would be left on the project? Just guessing, Justin, at this point. What are you thinking?
Probably over 100,000. Or about 100,000. We'd have to take a look at some of the final numbers, but
Right.
ballpark.
But a couple months from now, I mean, could the council consider using that to fund our sanitary project?
I think that'd be a question you'd have to talk to the bond council and check in with them to see if it would be a similar enough project that you could use it in this bond, but it's worth asking, I think. Steve, would you agree?
Yeah, I think he hit it just on a note, if it's similar. It depends on how closely related it is to the work that was completed with this project.
Something to investigate?
So with that, the application for payment in front of us tonight is for $318,464.52, and we've reviewed the application and are recommending approval.
So moved.
We have a motion by Eker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 10, unfinished business, we have the RS Fiber request to consent of sale.
Okay, at the last meeting, we have somewhat of a lengthy discussion about the proposal from RS Fiber Cooperative about their request for consent to sale of assets. They're looking at selling their company to Hiawatha Broadband Communications, or HBC, and they're looking to sell that their company for $14 million. They've reported that they have debt obligations in the form of loans to the tune of about $13 million. And so the Joint Powers Board was approached last month with this sale. And there was some questions that came up at the last council meeting as far as, they've basically reported that they have enough assets that could cover their obligations on their debt until the end of this year. The cooperative stated that. And so they said at that point they would be going into default on their loans, and ultimately that could lead to bankruptcy. A couple of questions arose during the meeting as far as, they had stated that they have gone out and hired a consultant to appraise the value of the company to determine whether or not the offer that they receive is a legitimate offer, and their consultant stated that, yes, it is. Question rose from the discussion of the council last meeting, well, how legitimate is that? Should the Joint Powers Board maybe hire their own consultant and go out and do the similar study to determine what the actual worth of the company is? And then secondly was a question about bankruptcy. What would that entail? What would that mean? And so Mark had agreed at the last meeting to prepare a letter for the council to try to address those items. So Mark's letter is in the council packet. So at this point, unless there's any questions for me, I'll just turn it over to Mark.
Sure, thank you, Steve. So the memo kind of spells out at least my understanding of how we've gotten to this point, essentially. We don't need to go over all those details. Again, I think we all kind of understand exactly how we got here. But bottom line, that this deal it appears that they haven't made any allocation for the city's bond obligations. So there's an offer to purchase the company at, what was it, Steve? I think $14 million, and they have a little under $13 million in debt, as best anybody can tell. And so the deal barely covers their secured debt. In a conventional circumstance, when you're dealing with a company with lots of creditors, typically you're going to approach all the creditors, and if there needs to be a haircut on the debt or you're asking for concessions, then that's agreed to as part of the deal. In this case, it doesn't appear that they're really even offering there's been any allocation for the city's bond debt. So I guess that's troubling in some respects, but according to RS Fiber, that's insight into their financial dire straits, I guess. I guess my implication or my assumption has been, when looking over this deal, is that they got an appraisal for X amount of dollars. The offer was for something along those lines, and I guess what's been communicated essentially is that that's as good as it's going to get. And accordingly, they're essentially asking the cities to walk away from whatever obligation RS Fiber has for these bonds, to once and for all just say, we're going to solely take it over. And I suppose that's something to consider. Obviously, we're sitting around here talking about it, but there doesn't seem to be anything to substantiate those assertions, that there's no value left in the company to get more money to try and pay all or a portion of the city's debt that they've incurred on this. And so accordingly, secured creditors get all their money back. Cities are just left out in the rain, basically. And if that's ultimately where this goes, then I suppose it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of the circumstances. But there's no way of determining that at this point.
But they need a yes, though, before they can sell. They need a majority yes, correct?
I apparently, yes. I mean, but again, these are circumstances solely created by RS Fiber and imposed upon the Joint Powers Board and the city. And so, according to them, yes, there are very significant and short time constraints on this. But I don't mean to sound brazen or cavalier. Those are RS Fiber's problems. They are not necessarily the city's problems. So to the extent that this is something that they're extremely serious about and has to happen, I guess from our perspective, it seems like that they should be doing a little more to, at the very least, accommodate some of the very reasonable questions that I know are being talked about on this city council's level, so I assume they're being talked about on other cities' levels. So what I'm not saying here is that this is necessarily a bad deal. What I'm saying here is that I don't know if it's a good deal or not. Nobody knows if this is a good deal or not. So what they're asking for is essentially all the cities go back, or excuse me, cities make motion votes, yay or nay, on the city council level, and that the representatives of each city take those yay or nay votes and cast them accordingly as part of the entire Joint Powers Board. But they're asking you to do that based upon no information, just saying, okay, here's a one-page press release that just flippantly makes a lot of assertions, and based upon that, you need to vote yes or no. So if that's not appealing to the city council, and again, it sounds like we only have one vote on this, but nonetheless, there potentially would be other options. Probably starting at asking for some information to substantiate this. From my mind, it would be very helpful, and I think a very short investigation if we could see an appraisal of the company. Now, I realize that isn't the easiest proposition, but all of this, whether this is a proper deal, whether this is a bad deal for the city, whether it's in our best interest or isn't, probably could be answered by just determining if this tender offer is actually in line with the value of the property. If it's too low, if it's bargain basement, from my perspective as the city's attorney, that would be occasion to say, well, if there's all this value, then why isn't there a contribution to this debt that the city has incurred on behalf of RS Fiber and solely for their benefit? It's not uncommon for creditors in situations like this to have to take a haircut on whatever they're owed. That is essentially the essence of the bankruptcy process, is forcing parties to essentially compel creditors to be more reasonable on their debt or liquidate the company and force creditors to take pennies on the dollar. So if that is the case, that there's actually a significant amount of additional value here that isn't reflected in the offer price, perhaps there's room for cities to approach RS Fiber and say, we know you're giving communities a valuable service, one that we appreciate, but if you want our yes vote, we at least need some contribution to this debt. That would have to kind of come out in the wash, but again, it all kind of ties back to what is the actual value of this company. And so if those discussions strike out, then I guess we're in a very difficult position of having to make a vote that has tremendous financial implications for the city without having even a fraction of the facts to make those decisions. And that's where you guys are in a tough spot, so.
So I thought I read everything that you put in our packet here, and am I understanding it correctly? After, just let me get this right, that, you know, as far as my opinion, there's only one way that the city should be saying yes. I'll give them a yes vote tonight, but that includes only, that yes is only good if we get our $1.8 million back with no further information. Per what you have in here, can we not make that demand as part of our yes?
I mean, I think we'd have to be pretty specific on how exactly we make the motion. But yes, I mean, you could condition the approval on essentially the RS Fiber and the buyer agreeing to, you know, contribute X amount of dollars towards this debt. You have to be kind of careful on how much that number is, because again, we don't really actually know the true financial condition of RS Fiber.
But we know our debt, our obligation.
Correct. So, I mean, that would be one way to go forward. Certainly, along the same lines, you could consider, you know, attaching that condition with less than the full $1.6 million we're owed. That would be within the council's discretion. I think from where we stand right now, you could either proceed with a motion along those lines or proceed with a motion simply soliciting more information from RS Fiber on the joint powers level. So essentially, it's a no vote unless they agree to provide us with some information, whether it's an appraisal, whether it's financials that substantiates this is an actual reflection of the value of the property. I guess if you wanted to go that direction, you probably wouldn't authorize a yes vote under any circumstances, just either a no vote or that's the message that's contributed that we want more information. And
Can you just come with me to the meeting next week?
potentially, yes.
Is every city in the same boat that we are with bond, same amount of what, or was it, did it vary by city when this all
Yeah.
originated?
Just per capita, the
Right, it
cost
was
of all-
based on population. So there's 10 cities that are part of that. That was my understanding.
It's not population, it's how many people signed up initially that were going to get ours fiber. So that's why ours is more, because we had more people that signed up than Winthrop in other cities. So that's how they did it.
So we paid more for having more people interested in it?
That signed up, that initially wanted it.
I'm a little confused by what you just told Chad. So you're saying that Jess can go there and she can say, yes, but we want our 1.6 million for our yes vote, and they're gonna be like, okay, we gotta go. That's very confusing to me.
Well, I mean, this whole process is kind of made up, to be honest with you. This is the direction that I guess this had to go, and so I'm not aware of anything that restricts our ability to condition a yes or a no vote. So if that's the condition that the city council wants to put on a yes vote, is that we'll approve this, but you have to give us back 1.6 or 500,000 or whatever it is, then, like I said, I haven't seen anything that says we can't do that, so.
Can we say no unless you give us our 1.6 million?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially, yeah, that would be another way to
I'd rather
characterize
say
it.
no unless you give us our 1.
Yes, I mean, that would be 100% the way that you'd want this structured, however you word it, that it is a no vote unless X amount of dollars are
Likely is
contributed.
that we are gonna get the 1.6 million back?
I guess any way that this plays out, I think it's highly unlikely.
Right, so
that-
if we say no unless we get it, then where does that put us?
I'd be happy if we got half of that. It's just, it's such an unfortunate situation, and with the information we have, I don't know how we make a decision.
Well,
Bankruptcy, we're gonna take at least a haircut on half, probably much more than that. So it kind of, I mean, to the extent that it's worth speculating on the bankruptcy process, that's probably the beginning and the end of it. There's no idea what exactly, which section they would file under, exactly how this would progress, because we don't know their finances. But one certainty is likely that city's gonna have to take a haircut on the money that it's owed. Any creditor would have to. So to be realistic, all of the amount back probably just isn't in the cards. But also to be realistic, I don't think it's unreasonable to at least require that they make a showing that it isn't viable to do the $0 they're proposing right now. And if they can't justify why we're at a zero in terms of our contribution to our debt, then I don't know how you make a yes vote on it, to be honest with you. But again, that's the difficult spot that you guys are in.
But technically, we took on the debt and they technically don't owe us anything.
I think that's been kind of the understanding that's been bandied about over the years. Again, I haven't had a chance, we're trying to track down all the documents to this to confirm that. I believe Kennedy and Graven is looking at that on the joint powers level. So that is what I'm operating under, but
Because that was what happened when we redid it. And that was a couple years ago. I remember. It could, my years are probably off, but it was recently when we redid that.
They took it off then, when they redid it?
All the cities voted that we would take off, because this was when they were restructuring again, or whatever they were doing, and
They went for an arm and they're like, hey, we'll take the arm and take all this debt off.
it just seems unusual that obviously where they're at right now, they've been working on this for some time, and they've known for some time that things weren't working out. And now they come at the last minute and say, we're at our last straw here, we need to get out of this, and are pushing everybody to make a quick decision. That does not sit well with me. To me, something's being hid there, something is strange there, that it's the last minute, that, why didn't they come to us months ago and they realized they were in trouble and say, hey, we're having problems here and this is where we might be headed? Instead of just coming at this point now and saying, here's what we gotta do. I mean, they already had a buyer lined up.
Well, isn't it interesting too? Don't they work with this company already? And this
HBC.
company is gonna give them the bottom line dollar and nobody else?
Because
is
when we
even bid.
redid it, HBC came in and purchased like some
Right.
cable fibers or,
But it just seems very shady to me that these guys are like giving them this bottom line dollar. How do they know? It just doesn't, the math isn't adding up at all. And it just doesn't seem.
Well, that's right, to me, they're trying to push something through real quick here, that they came last minute, now they want a yes vote from everybody and wipe this clean for them, and,
They haven't been forthcoming with any of their
no,
bids.
they haven't.
Short of them opening up their full financials to the city, no. I understand what Mark is saying and how eventually if this is going the way looks like it's gonna go one way or another, it's gonna get there, but I'd be fine with going to 90%, at least saying we want 90% of our debt. If you want a yes, if you want a sale, and we want 90% of our debt paid back. And I know that's their mindset, I know what their mindset is, Jessica, but there's a reason that exists, and it's because of them.
They just at least have to show us what the company's worth. Because it just seems like to make this deal with HBC and not show us anything, something's missing, something's not right. So quick.
I don't care what HBC tells us now, I mean, after what they helped RS Fiber restructure their debt, right? That's what we were told, and look where that got.
That was in the press release, yeah.
So after I read that, I mean, that's a lot of, that you call that helping? That wasn't very good help. But
Now they're gonna help them again by bailing them out.
every time a decision's made in this deal, it's gotten worse.
90% would be of that, it's about 1.4, a little over. Currently, we have about 1.1 remaining on the bonds that we currently have, just for information.
1.1,
Approximately.
so that would be, all right, so to date, we need 1.1 to finish out the obligation.
Yep.
Okay, I could live with that.
I think we have to try to get something. It's just sickening thinking about the city swallowing this money over
Yeah.
the next
12 years.
12 years, 13 years. Like, we have to try.
Absolutely.
so are you in communication with Gavin? Did you say did the Joint Powers Board hire them?
Well, no, so my understanding from the last meeting was that the Joint Powers Board hired Kennedy and Graven to assess the city's rights as creditors.
Okay, I knew we were gonna hire somebody, but they didn't specify it.
Kennedy and Graven's a good-sized municipal law firm in Minneapolis, so we're not talking about Gavin for McGlencoe or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
So, did that actually happen? Did the Powers Board
We
motion
wanted to,
Okay.
but we only had like $1,400 in there. So-
What was the big push at the time when RS Fiber started to get them here? I mean, why was that
Medical school?
the medical school? So that's gone, and now RS Fiber's gonna be gone. Why, Gaylord's really taking it in the shorts in that program.
So anyways, about Gavin, so you've heard communication from that, or?
So I haven't talked with any other city attorneys, any attorneys representing the Joint Powers Board. So Steve and I have just been working through our file on this. So I certainly can reach out to whomever, but I just don't have insight into who's working on this for other people.
What was the date? This vote's next week, or what?
Next Wednesday.
It's their next meeting. Yes, it depends on how the discussion goes, whether or not a vote will come to the floor.
Right, but we should vote tonight so Jessica knows what to bring to the table.
I'm not even comfortable making a vote until the Joint Powers Board finds out our assessment of the company.
Right.
I mean, we can't just go on what they're saying, correct?
I guess technically we probably can do what you want, but I don't think it's advisable to move forward unless we at least reach out and ask for more information. They may tell us no. I think that's bad idea. Anytime you owe somebody money and you're trying to sell assets to get out from under it, you're gonna have to disclose certain information to that lender. You're gonna have to substantiate why the underlying deal is in everybody's best interest. And, I mean, none of that has happened. So if that's what the council is inclined to do, it's probably a blanket no vote if this is put to a vote. And then you kind of have the consensus that City of Gaylord would very much like
More
to
information.
request a lot more information, but frankly, any information to substantiate that this is a good deal would do. And I fully expect that RS Fiber probably isn't gonna do that super willingly, but bottom line, they need the city's consent, so this deal closes. And you have to give us a basis to make a decision. And as far as I'm concerned, there isn't really a whole lot more to say to that. Can't make a decision unless we have some information to go on.
It would be nice to have a copy of that appraisal that they did. They haven't shared that yet either with us.
Have you talked to the Winthrop administrator at all? No?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what other counties or other cities are leaning towards and letting them know what we're wanting, so that, I mean, I think every city deserves more information.
If they're not forthcoming with information right now, they go into bankruptcy, they're not gonna have a choice, right? Then all that, because all the creditors are gonna want that information. So either they can provide it to us now, or they're gonna end up filing for bankruptcy, and we'll get it at that point.
They can sustain till the end of the year. So, I
Right.
mean, it's not like we have to vote.
But, and that's what I'm saying, if they don't wanna be forthcoming with us and giving this information that we're requesting, then they're just gonna have to ride it out. And if it gets to that point that they file for bankruptcy, then they're not gonna have an option, but that's all gonna come out.
How can they just not, do what the board asks them to do? I'm very confused by that, like, just blow the board off and not comply with things that the board asks them to do.
I mean, that's a good question. I guess I'm not super familiar with all of the ins and outs of this board and their legal authority to act. But I'm gonna guess that in some respects, this board holds a fair amount of power. In other respects, maybe not as much. And so, at this point, having to get the board's consent to this sale is perhaps more power in a given situation than maybe in other contexts this joint powers board would have. So, it purely is speculation on my part. This is a little puzzling to me as I'm trying to get up to speed about it. But at the end of the day, they need the cities to consent to this. And
Yeah.
so to do that, I really think they need to help us, help them, I guess to put it simply. Help us, help them make this happen. And to do that, we just need more information.
The reason that they said that they didn't is because if they brought it to us, it would be public information. And they were trying to do all this behind, without.
They've been saying that for a while. I mean, we asked them to do an update for us, and they didn't wanna give us the update because they didn't want that information to be public.
What's left to hide now?
Right, I don't.
Well, and they took $7 million from public municipalities. And so to have an expectation that they can do business entirely behind closed doors while also taking public money in the public discourse, I think is maybe, unrealistic. We have a lot of money tied up in this. At a certain point, when that's the case, you're dealing with cities, open meeting law applies, it's just a reality of the circumstances. I think perhaps there's some stuff we can do to try and keep this, at least for the very time being, private. I don't want to commit to anything to them, but at the end of the day, if it has to be out in the open, I don't see any other way, because we have to have something to go on here. We don't have anything right now.
In all reality, a majority of the other communities could say, yes, let's do this, and we'd be done, we'd be stuck, right?
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Sure hope not. we don't even have a feel which way they're leaning right now, which is
No.
crazy.
What did you say?
We don't even have a feel which way the other cities are leaning right now,
Right.
which,
Well, let's give Jessica our marching orders, at least for now, right?
Yep. Okay, so we need a motion to approve or not approve the RS Fiber Cooperative's consent to the sale of assets, and we're leaning towards not approving.
I make a motion for no.
We have a motion by Padilla. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Moko.
By everybody, it sounded like.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just so we're clear on the motion here, could you just explain, pardon me? Is it just a no vote period, or is there anything more attached to
You
it?
want more information?
We want more information.
Yes, we want more information on the financials of their company.
Okay,
I think it was the value of their company so that we know, we can make an informed decision on the offer that was made.
I think that's meaningful guidance to give leading up to the meeting, but any way you cut it, if this gets called for a vote, if I'm understanding kind of the discourse here, if this gets called for a vote next week, it's a no vote. If it doesn't get called for a vote, hopefully that means that everybody is on
Everybody
the same page that they
one-
want to pursue more information. Correct. And if we're going in that direction, if the Joint Powers Board wants to pursue more information, I guess I can't foresee them putting this up for a yay or nay vote.
I don't think so, because they all wanted more information. So,
Probably won't even come up.
I hope not.
I don't think so.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving on to new business, we have our health insurance renewal, and Todd Zimmerman, who's been waiting patiently, is here to join us tonight. So welcome, Todd.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The city of Gaylord's health insurance renews on January 1st. And we purposely did this far enough in advance in case we wanted to have some conversation of maybe taking a look at some different plans, okay? So I just wanted to kind of review the plans that the city offers to their employees, and then, just kind of let you know that there are some other options that we have also. So, in review of what's offered here to the employees, there's two plans. There's a bronze plan and there's a gold plan. And the bronze plan is a high deductible health plan, and it's compatible with a health savings account. And it's very easy to explain. It's a $7,000 deductible, and it's 100% coverage thereafter. Everything has to go towards your deductible first. Your prescription drugs, your office visits, it all goes towards your deductible. Once you hit the $7,000, you have 100% coverage thereafter, okay? With that plan, you have 2 individual employees that are on that plan, and you have 2 families. So there's a total of 4 employees that are on that plan, okay? The increase for 2025 on that plan is 5.2%, okay? So that's what the rates are gonna go to effective January 1st, all right? The next plan that's offered here is a gold plan, and it's a $1,000 deductible, and after you pay the $1,000 deductible, it's 80/20 coinsurance, so you would pay 20%, the plan would pay 80%, up to an out-of-pocket max of $3,000, okay? Now, the beauty of that plan is it has a prescription drug card, so if you're on a prescription drug, it's a 10, let me just make sure this, yeah, it's 10, 50, 90. So if you're on a generic drug, you pay $10. A brand name drug, it's 50. And on a non-brand, or a non-preferred brand name drug, it's $90, which is what you would pay on the copay. The prescription drug coverage doesn't have to go to your deductible first. It's first dollar coverage. And along with that plan, there's an office visit copay, and that's $30. That's another area where it doesn't have to go towards your deductible of the $1,000. You have first dollar coverage for that. So you have first dollar coverage for the prescriptions and for the office visits. Everything else goes towards your deductible, and then it's 80/20 coinsurance to a maximum out of pocket of $3,000. So those are the 2 plans that are offered here to the employees. On the gold plan, you have 6 employees that are on that plan. No family coverage, it's all single coverage on that plan. And once again, the rate increase on that plan is 5.2%. So that was a aggregate total of the renewal was 5.2%. And just to kind of let you know, every year I do this, I want to make sure that the plan that you're on here has competitive rates. And so what I do is I take the census of the employees here, and I've got a computer program with all of the carriers in this area. Their rates are plugged into this program. And I put in the census, and I mean, basically there's 4 major carriers in this area. We're talking about Blue Cross, Health Partners, United Healthcare, and then Medica, which the city's on Medica anyway because the co-op has Medica as their insurance carrier. But you can actually buy Medica outside of the co-op also. So just to kind of let you know, when I did that, the co-op came in at least 15% lower than the next best bid, okay? So with that being said, your best bet is just to stay with the co-op. Now, if you want to try to save some premium dollars, the co-op has other plans that we can take a look at. And I think I presented some other options to the Personnel Committee, and we took a look at those, and I think they have some more, you know, I think you wanted to visit that, those options a little bit more, and then decide what you want to do moving forward. But you can be rest assured that the co-op right now has the best plan, the best rates for the city of Gaylord. And what they did is the reason why your renewal was, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great either, but it's because the claims for the city of Gaylord was in line this past year, okay? So that's why your renewal came in at 5.2. I've got some renewals are at like 13, 14%. So with the co-op, they can base your renewal on the claims that you have in your group. All right? Anybody have any questions on that? I think everybody got a printout of the plans that the city has there, if I'm not mistaken. And the Personnel Committee, I don't know how in-depth you want to get about that with that, Steve. I mean, you guys talked about the alternate plans at all, or where you're at with that?
Yeah, Todd did attend our Personnel Committee last month, and then the committee asked for some additional, I guess, options as far as in addition to what we already currently have. And so, like Todd mentioned, looking at the co-op and the other potential plans that are offered. This would be specifically the co-pay, where it's the 80/20. That's not in your information, but the Personnel Committee looked at a couple different ones. You know, again, Todd stated that currently we have the $1,000 deductible plan. So if we went to a $2,000 or a $3,000 plan, what would that mean as far as a savings to the city potentially? And what would that mean to the cost for the employee? So with a $2,000 deductible plan, that would basically add another $1,000 to the out-of-pocket cost. You know, it's a $1,000 deductible, so there's an extra $1,000, and then plus the out-of-pocket would go up $1,000. And the same would be true with the $3,000, except it would be $2,000 for each. So you're going from a $1,000 to a $3,000, and then the out-of-pocket would be $4,000 versus, or $6,000, excuse me, versus the $3,000 that they currently have.
So the HSA would go away, you're recommending then?
The HSA was proposed to continue to that's a $7,000 deductible plan. Again, that's just straight deductible, no copay at all.
So the employee can pick between the two?
Correct.
Okay.
So we have two options, yes.
And the HSA contribution, that's a year-to-year deal too. So if you want to adjust that HSA contributions for the employees, you can do that also. But that was the idea with the high deductible health plan, is take the savings, put it into a side account, you know, so that's what makes it attractive to employees that don't utilize their
What
health
are we
insurance
at for
much.
that contribution?
$200 per month. So I think it was in 2022 when you started that HSA plan, and that was what you agreed at that time, and that's what's been going forward since then. So no change there. So the Personnel Committee this evening met again, and they talked about the two options about whether or not they would like to propose a change as far as the copay health plan, and their recommendation is to basically continue with the current plan, but to put basically staff on notice that for 2026 they would like to consider a new plan. So for 2025 to continue the same plan, that we currently offer, but in '26, look at a new plan, not specifically defining that, what that would be at this point in time, but basically to look at it then. So more or
Just to
less,
explore.
giving staff a whole year here of notice.
But just to explore options, or?
Well, yeah, they will explore options, but the point was that the committee is proposing is that we would make a change at that time for 2026.
From the $1,000 deductible to possibly a higher deductible, which would be a savings to the city. But giving everybody all of next year, knowing that the $1,000 deductible would be for 2025, but in 2026, it may not be the $1,000 deductible. So they could kind of plan for it, is the thought.
Very good.
Okay, any other questions? Do we need a motion tonight to continue?
I don't think you need a motion. We're already with the co-op. Unless you want to do something different. If you want to
No.
stay with them, then it's just a consensus then.
Okay, so do we have consensus to stay with the co-op?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, thank
right,
you very
thank
much for your time and all your hard work you do for
Thanks,
us.
Don.
We just need you to sign that one sheet right there, Steve, and then check yes to the two plans that you want, and then just email it back.
Okay.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Right.
Okay, moving on to 11B, we have resolution number 2024-29, Luis Mendoza, conditional use permit.
This is an item coming from the Planning and Zoning Commission. They met earlier this month. They held a public hearing on an application from Luis Mendoza he'd like to establish used automobile sales and display at 7th, 4th Street, just down the block here. The property is Zone B1, which is our downtown district. It is allowed as a conditional use, and thus there's the application. In your packet, there is a resolution basically approving the conditional use permit. That is the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning. There was no public comment with this application. It does outline the conditions on page 102 of your packet. This would be page 2 of the resolution. He was requesting up to a maximum of 10 vehicles that he could display at any given time. He did mention that he would potentially display or have vehicles inside the building, but basically he would be allowed to, if he so choose, to have 10 outside. He said initially he was only looking at probably a couple vehicles. His point of asking for 10, he didn't make it sound like that's where he was going to be going, but he at the same time, he didn't want to have to come back and go through the process again if he ever does get up to that level.
Is that resolution number, is it 24-27?
Thank you for mentioning that. I made, and did she put it, she didn't put
In
a
the-
copy.
the
It should be
packet paper.
29. On the one that's in the packet, it should be 29. So on the
Should be
first-
29.
Yeah, on the first page there, pardon me. Yep, that was an error. We meant to put out a copy of that on your table this evening, so sorry
Oh,
about
yeah.
that we forgot.
Yeah.
Well, she did put it out?
Oh,
Yep, it's
yeah.
here.
Perfect.
All right. so
Okay,
it is-
great.
Sure.
So, yeah, when the motion comes, if you could make it 29. I did want to point out on page 102, item number 3, this was something that did come up during the P&Z meeting as far as, you know, all the vehicles that he's going to have out there for sale, they should be in an operable condition. There shouldn't be any major parts missing from them. And the value that he places on them should be more than the scrap that's value of the vehicle. So we just wanted to make sure that we're going to have appropriate vehicles out there, something that wouldn't be necessarily a nuisance type vehicle. All the vehicles that are out for display, they need to be off-street. We don't want them to be parked on the street for sale. And then also, if he's going to have any business signage, he needs to make sure he gets the permitting requirements for that too. So that's a kind of a quick overview of that. Again, this was recommended unanimously by the P&Z.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-29.
We have a motion by Moko. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Groko. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to 11C, we have resolution number 2024-30, a variance requested by Silvio Amorum at 360 Division Street.
So Silvio owns this property. He's actually doing some work on it. He's looking to replace the front steps with a deck. He won't meet our front setback requirement, which is 30 feet in this R1 single and two-family residential district. He's looking to be 6.5 feet less than that, 30. So that's his variance, is the 6.5 feet. Again, the public hearing was held by the P&Z. No public comment was provided on this variance application, and the P&Z is recommending unanimously to approve it.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve resolution number 2024-30.
So move.
Motion from Kufal, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Padilla. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on our agenda is 11D, resolution number 2024-31, resolution adopting fiscal year 2024 preliminary property tax levy for collection in 2025 and calling for a truth and taxation hearing.
So going back to the meeting, you guys held a work session meeting on September 4th. You talked about a number of things associated with next year's budget, one being the preliminary property tax levy. It was, consensus was at that time to get it under 7%, so proposed here for just the preliminary is 6.9% or $131,520 increase for the property tax levy. Just to point out this, the general fund reflects currently a $94,000 approximately increase for next year. And then later this year, we would be looking at having a discussion as far as what the utility rates are going to be and what increase you're going to consider for next year. We've typically done that later in the year when we're looking at the fee schedule. And maybe we'll do it at this time. Our representative from ABDO, our auditors, will be in with the financial plan, a draft of that at our second meeting in October. We should be presenting a draft at that time. So resolution 2024-31 is in your packet on page 112.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Then we will look for a motion to approve resolution number 2024-31.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Padilla, seconded by Eager. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, last thing on our agenda is 11E, Manufacturing Week Proclamation. Just gotta get to the right page here. Manufacturing Week is the week of September 30th to October 5th. So I will read the proclamation. City of Gaylord Manufacturing Week Proclamation, whereas manufacturing is a dynamic and robust industry crucial to the health and strength of Minnesota's diverse economy, and whereas manufacturing is the third largest industry employer in Minnesota, accounting for 11% of all jobs in the state. Of Minnesota's 87 counties, there are 24 where at least 1 in 5 jobs is in manufacturing. And whereas in 2023, manufacturing contributed $57.2 billion into Minnesota's economy, and whereas manufactured exports brought $22.5 billion into the Minnesota economy in 2023, and workers took home $25.7 billion in wages from Minnesota manufacturing jobs in 2023, the second largest total payroll among private sector industries. And whereas manufacturing in Minnesota pays an average annual wage of $79,000, which is 10% higher than the state's overall average private sector wage. And whereas manufacturing provides over 325,800 highly skilled, well-paying jobs, which significantly contribute to Minnesota's high standard of living and economic vitality. And whereas Minnesota added about 2,000 net new manufacturing jobs over the year from 2022 to 2023, and whereas the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development expects more than 93,000 job openings for manufacturing production positions alone through 2032. And whereas there are roughly 8,625 manufacturing companies in Minnesota, making a wide range of products that create solutions and improve quality of life in Minnesota and around the world. Now therefore, I, Dawn Kratzke, Mayor, along with City Council members Lynn Grocco, Chad Moko, Scott Kufal, Jessica Eaker, and Tony Padilla, do hereby proclaim the week of September 30th to October 5th, 2024 shall be observed as Gaylord Manufacturing Week, adopted by the City Council on this 18th day of September 2024.
This year, the EDA, along with Gaylord Area Chamber of Commerce, are going to recognize Manufacturing Week by an event out at Wakefield Park. They're going to be hosting it. This is their 3rd annual, and that's going to be scheduled for Thursday, October 3rd. We generally have held a luncheon, so it'll be from 11:30 to 1. So we'll have our kind of welcoming, and then lunch, and then Wakefield will give a presentation about their company.
So we need a motion to approve the City of Gaylord Manufacturing Week proclamation.
So,
We have a motion by Eaker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kufal. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Any closing comments or anything else?
motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn from Eaker. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Grocco. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.